I'm Danielle Metz.
I'm Robert Vaughn.
And this is the Danielle Metz Show. Creed. Definition. 1. Is sincerely, freely, and deeply held. 2. Is integrally linked to a person's identity, self-definition, and fulfillment. 3. Is a particular and comprehensive overarching system of belief that governs one's conduct and practices. 4. Addresses ultimate questions of human existence, including ideas about life, purpose, death, and the existence or non-existence of a creator and or a higher or different order of existence. 5. Has some nexus or connection to an organization or community that professes a shared system of belief. This is the definition of creed as supplied by the Human Rights Commission of Ontario as it pertains to human rights. The only reason I bring up this tidbit of dry and largely useless information is because I happened upon an article in the National Post dated May 21st titled, "Ontario Firefighters Say His Human Rights Were Violated Because He Wasn't Given Vegan Food During BC Wildfires." One Adam Knopf has apparently filed a complaint with the Human Rights Commission, or Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario, rather, against his employer, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, because they didn't accommodate his chosen meal plan to his satisfaction in the middle of a massive forest fire in an area that only had one store open to serve food, a Tim Hortons. But you see, he's an ethical vegan, a belief system that entitles him to special accommodation and treatment. He claims it's a creed. And based on what I read on the Human Rights Commission's website, he may well be right, at least by their standards. And while I tend to grab popcorn and settle back to watch whenever two government bodies come into conflict over some subjective definition, I worry about the larger impact that such a ruling may have over in the real world. So, Robert, should employers be required to bend over backwards to attend to the, quote, human right of being an ethical vegan?
No.
Well, that was a short show.
See you next time. Nope. As far as the law goes, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But the law is...
You mean law. It's Human Rights Tribunal. It's law. It's a kangaroo court. It's not real law. It's not codified.
It is a very subjective law based on bizarre beliefs. The law is, not necessarily being vegan, although that is a little odd too. Though I don't care if people are vegan or not, that's their business. Discrimination came into being, if you just go back, probably in the States is a good example, because they had to codify the fact that you shouldn't discriminate based on race. And I oppose that, because that violates a person's right to associate with whomever they wish to. So to mollify the black population of the States, they said, okay, businesses, people, not just the government, should not discriminate on the basis of your race, even though blacks do that all the time. Try going into a black bar in Detroit as a white person, you know.
White privilege, Robert. You have to remember, you have to check your white privilege. You're the oppressor, they're the oppressed. They cannot be racist.
Yeah, right. So, and of course, that violates somebody's right to associate as a business owner, so they have that right if they wish to. But it's been codified, as you say, that they can't do that anymore. That right is now being violated actively by the American government. And in Canada, we have our so-called Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which, unlike the United States Constitution, which governs the
natural rights?
Government, no, the government, the Charter, the United States Constitution governs the government and applies to the government.
Yeah, limitations rather than...
Right. Our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms has been taken to govern individuals, not just the government. So when it says in there that you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, they're not talking about the government. No, they should be. They're talking about individuals. And then you have the human rights commissions, these kangaroo courts, the human rights tribunals, which then say that, no, you as an individual don't have a right to associate with whomever you do or want to. You must associate with these people who you may disagree with, and you have to accommodate them. We've seen it before in high schools and universities where Muslims have demanded a prayer room or separate holidays from everybody else, or the statute holidays, or just any other accommodation. And now we're seeing it with the use of so-called personal pronouns for transgendered people. Again, it's
or gender fluid people. You don't even have to be trans. You can just identify as.
Well, gender dysphoric people, to be quite precise. Yeah.
No, or just teenagers looking to cause trouble. That's what I call it.
And so you've gone from one thing, which was don't discriminate against a person based on something they have no control over, their race, their color, right? Or even their sexual preference. And then we've gone from that to saying don't discriminate based on a person's choices. This is the thin edge of the wedge is now being dug in, again, to violate people's rights. I'm not talking about the vegans, I'm talking about the employers, with their rights.
Well, it's become topsy-turvy because the firefighter in this case, he knew he had these restrictions that he chose himself. Like he couldn't, it went so far as that they gave him veggie burgers or soy burgers, and because the cook had touched meat burgers with the same glove, he couldn't eat it, and so he threw it at. So we're not talking, please just abide by, I really don't like eating meat. No, it was he exercised everything from his life to do with animal product. So he expects not for him to adapt his life, make a different career choice, be in a position where he could control that environment that he needed to control. He expects everybody else to accommodate that. He's in the middle of a massive wildfire in BC where there's nothing around. And he got mad and was apparently very aggressive with his fellow employees because they couldn't accommodate, because he had a special dietary need that he should have known about, being a firefighter that does that kind of thing.
I'd fire his ass.
Well, yeah, they suspended him. That's why he's filing a complaint, because they apparently they chastised him and they gave him a suspension because he was being basically a bit of a, how shall I say, difficult.
yeah. So they didn't fire him because he's a vegan. They fired him because he's an a-hole.
Yeah,
and he was being violent or belligerent. Yeah.
And that's the thing is, and not even fired, only suspension, because it is the Ministry of, it's a governmental office, right? So they don't fire people. They will suspend them and censure them. But but based on the Human Rights Commission's, when I looked it up, and they're like, yeah, creed, could be pretty much anything at this point, as long as it's, because the society has become secular, is their argument, that they have to look for other sorts of creeds. And I mean, they protect religions, the Raelians, which apparently was stated on their website, which apparently they believe that aliens came down and genetically changed human beings to become sentient. They believe in the Rocky Mountain something, a bizarre cult. These are all protected creeds. But because atheists don't have a religion to subscribe to be protected for their creed, they're coming up with these other terms and conditions to fulfill that role. So creed no longer means religious affiliation, it now means personal belief. And I don't think that or preference even, and I don't think you can't hold anybody to account for that. I don't even think creed should be irrelevant. Like that's a personal belief and it's a personal choice. And because you chose it yourself as an individual, you should not expect other people to adhere to it or to give you special accommodation for it. That's because if you really believe it, then it should be worth the sacrifice.
If I was an employer again, I think I'd have a questionnaire where I would say, do you have any dietary restrictions we should be aware of? And it may sound like I'm asking out of compassion for them, and I'll supply them with whatever they want, but I'd use that to say, I'm not hiring you, you're a bloody vegan. You'll have these stupid laws thrust down my throat as an employer to supply you with food that I'm not willing to supply you with.
Well, yeah, all you have to do is say you're worried about whether they have any allergies or something like that you should be aware of. So
or do you observe any particular religious holidays that we should be aware of? Great, that'll be a question to weed out people that you don't want to hire because they're going to be disruptive to your work flow because they want a day off, you know. So these people are going to do harm to, in this particular case, it looks like this guy has an agenda because he's trying to foist it upon others. So their agenda, they're going to do harm to their agenda.
Yeah, it's the thing I've come across when I've dealt with a lot of clients of mine that had employees, and how these outliers, these people that put restrictions and force this kind of stuff on their employers, create such stress between the employer and employee relationship and causes the employer to, like you said, you're going to ask if they have any dietary restrictions, because the more these issues come up, the more you as the employer have to protect yourself. And I've seen, and most of the people I have had as clients, well, actually all of them have been great people and they do their best, but they all get burned at some point in time by somebody who pulls a stunt like this, and therefore that makes them more cautious, less willing to accommodate people in the future because it only comes back to hurt them.
Human rights codes were instituted specifically, now get this, because it's Marxism. Because if you read the Human Rights Code for Ontario, which I've done, it applies to a certain class of people, mainly employers and landlords.
The capitalists.
Exactly. So these people aren't individuals in the minds of the Marxists and the neo-Marxists. These are capitalists, as you say. They are faceless, money-grubbing capitalists. Mm-hmm. It's the new anti-Semitism, this against businessmen. And so they pile on all these kinds of accommodations that businesses, capitalists, must have for people based on the silliness, really, absolute silliness, their choices, whether it's to call them by the proper personal pronoun or to give them a diet that they ask for, to give them the days off that they want, and to provide a prayer room if they want to take off time from work to pray every time. So it's anti-business, it's anti-capitalist, it's anti-freedom, it's anti-individual.
It's pro-collective labor. That's all it is.
Yeah, human rights commissions, human rights codes, all should be abolished. It has to be said. People are taking it tacitly too. That human rights. Well, who's against human rights? yeah. There are human rights according to the United Nations that people have a right to a job and a right to clean water and a right to dignity. It's all hogwash, and it should be abolished.
And a right to feminine products too, you know.
Yeah, I'll run out and get my my ration.
There you go. Spread the wealth around. You can share.
Yeah.
It is really ridiculous, and like I said, the part that I have the hardest time with is the more ridiculous this gets, the more the backlash becomes, and their employers are going to be less likely to hire anybody who have any little issues or anything, even if it's honest, realistic issues. They're just going to find a way to you can't stop people from discriminating. They're just going to find a different way of describing or giving her an excuse of why they're actually discriminating that person. Hey, what's your dietary restrictions? Okay, you're a vegan? Well, I'm afraid, of your allergies. You might come into contact with peanuts or something like that. So it just hurts the employers. Well, actually, it hurts the employees more in the long run because the employers can always find a way around it. And they don't realize it. So, well.
And it also these stupid laws, these irrational laws, put real lawmakers in disrepute because people have such a disdain for politicians and government when they come up with these stupid laws that, making good laws are scoffed at because, or the good laws are scoffed at because the bad laws are just everywhere.
Yeah, they're tainted by association.
Yeah.
It's like they're not keeping good company. The good laws aren't keeping good company. That's the problem. So people don't pay attention to it. Take care, behave yourself, and we'll talk again soon. Cheers.
If you've enjoyed this presentation, visit justrightmedia.org for more programming that's not right-wing, it's just right.